Alright, hey guys, hope you guys are doing well. In today's video, we're going to talk about why I chose DSG for the GTI. I don't think this is something I've ever covered on the channel, and I don't think it's actually been a pretty positive choice, honestly, looking back on it. I haven't had much negativity with my DSG choice. Obviously, these are enthusiast cars. Most enthusiasts go with the manual transmission, but I'm going to talk to you guys why I chose the DSG and why the DSG is honestly still a really good option for those of you who don't feel comfortable with a manual transmission, or for some of you guys who, deal with a lot of city driving, or, whatever your reason may be. I'm going to talk to you guys and hopefully explain my thought process on why I chose a DSG transmission for the GTI. My thought process behind getting a DSG transmission at first was definitely my comfort level with a manual transmission. It's a terrible excuse because, a lot of people, you have to try manual transmission, you have to learn it, and once you do, it really is beneficial because it's such a fun driving experience. Now, something that I think I really took for granted is the fact that I never really learned manual transmission when I was buying a car, and even though some of the options that I wanted to get were only offered in manual transmission, I wanted a Fiesta ST, Focus ST, and I was even really interested in the 500 Abarth. I really like that car, it sounds awesome, and I only wanted the manual version of those, so there was certainly some interest in learning manual, but I did my research and I learned a lot about the DSG, and I really, honestly, after kind of learning about it and seeing kind of the capabilities and the fact, I guess the performance never really mattered too much to me at the time, because I just wanted a car that was going to be performance oriented but also have easy drivability. So that's kind of what really lured me to the DSG transmission, and aside from the fact that the car also, it also made those DSG pop sounds, or the DSG farts that a lot of people love. I like them. They're not anything crazy, especially because I've heard pops my entire experience driving this car. Essentially, now I have the Crackle tune, and it's a love-hate, honestly. Especially people around me definitely hate it. So there is that. But yeah, so when I was definitely looking for a car, I wanted something easy but performance oriented, and I never really gave the manual transmission the time of day. I never considered it as an option for me, and that was simply because I was not familiar with manual. I really could not drive manual at all, and I really, honestly, I liked the 6-speed DSG. It seemed pretty promising when I was doing my research. So that's kind of my thought process. That's kind of why I went with it. I was a little bit uncomfortable with manual transmission, and yeah, so I ended up with the DSG. Now, do I regret my choice? After 4 years of driving this car, I do not regret my choice. I think this car is, I don't know, I want to say the GTI, in my opinion, and this is going to sound crazy because I just said I didn't regret my choice, but the GTI, in my opinion, is a car that kind of demands a manual transmission. It's weird to say, but I think the car is not that fast. I mean, it is pretty quick, especially when you tune it, and the GTI isn't really that fast, and the gears are really nicely spaced out, so you're not really shifting all the time, and that is kind of one of the lures to manual transmission. A lot of people like the manual just because the gearing is really nice. The shifter, the way that I've driven a manual GTI before, and of course later on, and I will say the gearing is really, really nice. Everything's spaced out. It does feel right for the car. Now, the reason why I don't regret my choice, and the reason why I'm still consistent, and I would probably still personally buy a DSG, is because the DSG with a tuned GTI just works so unbelievably well, and my explanation for that is, and I'm not gonna say the launch control, because that's obviously something you don't get with the manual transmission. The launch control is irrelevant with the DSG if you have a GTI. It just does not have the traction for launch control is irrelevant, so we won't consider that as a factor. But you know, for some of you guys with really meaty tires and good engine mounts, you could consider launch control to be a pro. For me, I'm just going to be neutral towards it. But regardless, so my reasoning behind the DSG and why I really would still go DSG if I were to buy another GTI again, well, it honestly, it fits the car so well. You know, similar to what the manual transmission would, both transmissions really complement the car in such different ways, and the way this thing will upshift, I mean, it's so rapid, and the downshifts are good. I will say a lot of the problems that people have with the DSG gearbox are fixed, or at least remedied with the DSG Tune offered by a number of tuning companies. APR, that's the software that I have for my TCU, which is the DSG, and it has really properly changed the car in a positive way, so I'm really happy about that. So my type of driving is really, I mean, I drive, say, like 70 to 80 miles, and occasionally used to be every week, going back home from school. Now, you know, it's, you know, a couple times a month. I do a lot of long distance driving. A lot of people are probably thinking, well, 60 to 70 miles or 80 miles, that's not really long distance. But for me, you know, I go to school in Durham, New Hampshire at UNH, and occasionally we go to Boston, so occasionally I'm in a city area, and you know, in my opinion, I think the DSG just really shines because it gives me the ability and the comfort level that I can drive anywhere I want, and I don't necessarily have to worry about, you know, always shifting. Yeah, so I mean, DSG kind of prevents any worry when it comes to traffic driving, because, you know, if I'm on the highway, I can just put it into drive and just completely forget about it. It doesn't even feel like a GTI at that point, which is super nice, depending on what kind of modifications you have. If you have a really loud exhaust, maybe. But you know, for me, if I'm just on the highway and I'm cruising, this thing is really quiet. It just doesn't feel like a GTI. It doesn't feel like a performance car, and sometimes that's a really nice thing. You know, if I'm really just kind of, it's been a long day, or if it's really early in the morning, it's super nice to just pop this thing into its, you know, drive setting, not have to worry about shifting, and you know, go along with my my morning or my day. So again, there's pros to that. Now, one of the main things that I really want to talk about, and this goes to the tuning aspect of GTIs and why my manual versus DSG opinion is more focused on the DSG side. Now, I will say this, you know, both, there are different ways of approaching both. If you have a manual transmission, you tune your car, you do an upgraded clutch. Now that is an easy fix to holding down a lot of torque, a lot of power. However, you know, with upgraded clutch, there is some concern, and there are some people out there, some instances where there's something called crank walk, and I don't know too much about it, but I do know it has something to do with a stronger clutch, and obviously some tuned GTI, or I think even ours suffer from it too. In fact, they would totally suffer from it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure ours are also a victim of crank walk. Now, crank walk is not necessarily a widespread issue. The way that you tune a DSG car is obviously get the ECU tune. Preferably, if you go stage 1, do the TCU tune. You should absolutely do that. There's not a rhyme or reason why you shouldn't, and there's no excuse why you shouldn't, aside from it is a very expensive investment. It's probably around $700, which is probably the same price, I think, as an ECU tune. So, you know, there is cost involved. However, definitely tune your DSG. It holds, you just don't have to worry about slip, because if you get slip with a DSG, you're in really tough shape. I mean, these things are not supposed to slip. You just can't slip them. If you are, there's some fault, and your clutch pack is probably extremely worn, and that's very expensive. I think that's, you know, up to like $5,000 to $6,000 for a clutch pack. I could be a little bit out of the, you know, the ballpark. Maybe it's a little less, but you know, that probably includes labor. It'd probably be right around there. So definitely something to consider. Definitely do the TCU tune. It increases your clutch clamping pressure, and yeah, it will help you out in the long run. So yeah, so again, the trade-off is, you know, when you have an upgraded clutch for a manual transmission, it does change the shifting dynamics. It does make it a little bit stiffer. Funny enough, I drove a Stage 3 Golf R with an upgraded clutch. manual transmission car, and I don't daily drive a manual transmission. I was just stalling it, and it was very embarrassing. The car just did not feel like, you know, the car just did not like the way I was driving, and it was just, it had such a, you know, beefy clutch. It was just so hard to find a bite point. Of course, you know, a little bit of practice goes by, and you should master an upgraded clutch, but yeah, it's just, it does change the driving, and it could change it in a negative way depending on what you like. I think the feel of the clutch and the throws and everything is really, really nice. They are kind of longer throws on the manual transmission, so you know, a short throw shifter. But again, the nice thing about the DSG is when you tune the DSG, it doesn't change it. If anything, it really makes it better. It changes your shift points, it changes kind of the aggression of the shifting, but it doesn't, you know, there's no clutch, so you're not, it doesn't change your daily driving. It honestly promotes more performance-oriented driving, because you know and you're certain that your clutch can definitely hold your newer power. So you know, there is some truth to that. So that's kind of my thinking. That's why I would definitely still stick with the DSG. To kind of summarize everything that I said, I would say the DSG is really, really nice because it does fit the car. It doesn't feel like it shouldn't be in the car. I've driven manual automatic transmissions, and it just does not feel like it should be in a car. You know, either it's been really sloppy, it's just been slow. This is a good transmission. This is the third iteration of the DSG, Mark 5, Mark 6, and Mark 7 GTIs. So we've had 3 generations of a dual clutch transmission, and it's you know, whenever a sports car is, you know, Corvette, let's say that, or GT500 for instance, you know, when that came out with the dual clutch very recently for the 2020, a lot of people really didn't like it because it was new for the car, and there's never been a Shelby name with a automatic transmission. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. So a lot of people really hesitated with that. Now we're going on our 4th with the Mark 8 of DSG dual clutch transmissions for Volkswagen, and honestly, it's natural now. It's not necessarily something to look down upon. The only people who really kind of give me grief about driving a dual clutch or a DSG or an automatic, as people would call it, which it is people from, you know, kind of from my area who kind of just drive Saabs around. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but just people who really don't know necessarily much about the DSG. By now, a lot of Volkswagen and really any enthusiast knows a lot about this transmission. It's a really, really good transmission. It doesn't rob you of any, you know, feel of the car. Certainly, you are more you're in better shape if you have a manual transmission, just for a stock feel. But other than that, I would just say the DSG is really nice. It's really easy to master, of course, because there's not much to master. But yeah, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Your guys' support has been what's been fueling all of these videos and all my uploads. I really want to keep doing this, and I'm going to keep doing this. Obviously, as you guys know, the car is for sale. If anyone's interested, please DM me on Instagram at New England Pete. And yeah, so hopefully everyone's well. This coronavirus thing is totally messed up. But you know, if you guys are ever feeling low, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you guys. You know, we'll talk about cars, and even go for a drive. You know, if you guys have a GTI or any car, just go for a nice drive, because gas is relatively cheap still, and I don't know, it's just really good therapy. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out, guys.